The sea wind howled through the narrow pass of Thermopylae, carrying the stench of sweat, steel, and blood. Beneath the blazing Greek sun, 300 men stood shoulder to shoulder, knowing they would not leave this mountain alive. Their armor glinted like dying embers, their spears pointed toward an endless tide of Persian soldiers. History remembers them as heroes. But behind the legend lies a story far darker, more human, and infinitely more tragic. If you love true tales of courage and sacrifice that shaped civilizations, make sure to like, subscribe, and join us as we uncover the brutal truth behind the 300 Spartans. At dawn, the ground trembled beneath the march of thousands. The Persian army, numbering in the hundreds of thousands, descended upon the narrow mountain pass known as Thermopylae. Waiting for them were Leonidas and his 300 chosen warriors, each handpicked from Sparta's finest. They were not fighting for victory. They were fighting to delay death. The scent of salt and iron hung thick in the air, as men whispered prayers to gods who seemed deaf to mortal cries. Yet, the Spartans stood unshaken, steel hearts beneath bronze breastplates. Leonidas, king of Sparta, was no stranger to fate. He knew his march to Thermopylae was not a campaign. It was a death sentence wrapped in glory. But Spartan law forbade retreat. To die in battle was the highest honor a man could earn. And so he smiled grimly beneath his plumed helmet, his eyes burning not with fear, but defiance. Behind him, his men stood silent, awaiting the coming storm. Each heartbeat echoed like a war drum, marking the seconds before destiny's final charge. The first Persian waves crashed against the Spartan shield wall like thunder. Arrows darkened the sky, yet none broke the phalanx. Spears thrust forward in rhythmic unity, each strike met with screams of agony. The narrow pass nullified Persia's vast numbers. Men slipped on blood-soaked stone, shields cracked, flesh tore. Still, the Spartans held. For 2 days, they defied an empire. But the price was steep. Their muscles burned, their throats parched, and sleep became a memory whispered through clenched teeth. At night, as fires flickered and the dead were dragged away, Leonidas walked among his men. He spoke softly, his words steady as stone. "Remember," he said, "the world watches what we do here." The men nodded, their faces streaked with ash and blood. Some clutched charms from home, tokens of wives and children they'd never see again. Others simply stared into the dark, listening to the distant cries of dying Persians. In those silent hours, even the bravest felt the weight of their own mortality. But betrayal seeps through the cracks of every legend. A Greek named Ephialtes, driven by greed and resentment, revealed a secret mountain path to the Persians. With this treachery, the enemy could surround the Spartan defense. When Leonidas learned of it, he did not curse the gods or despair. He only nodded, as though he had expected this twist all along. "So be it," he murmured. "Then we fight in the shade." And with those words, he sealed his fate and that of every man beside him. As dawn broke on the third day, the Spartans prepared for their final stand. The Persians poured through the hidden path like a river of shadows. Surrounded on all sides, Leonidas rallied his men with one last roar. Shields locked, spears lifted. They met death with open eyes. The clash of bronze against flesh filled the pass with a sound not of war, but of defiance. The ground was slick with blood, the air thick with the scent of burnt flesh and salt tears. Leonidas fell before noon. Arrows pierced his body, yet even in death, he remained upright, his shield still raised. Around him, his warriors continued the fight, some using broken swords, others bare hands. The Persians, though countless, hesitated at the sight of such fury. For every Spartan that fell, 10 Persians followed. The pass became a graveyard of tangled corpses, a monument to the madness of men who refused to surrender. When the last Spartan dropped his weapon, the silence was deafening. The battle was over, but the legend had just begun. Xerxes, the Persian king, ordered Leonidas' head to be displayed as a warning. But in doing so, he immortalized the man he sought to erase. Across Greece, the story of Thermopylae spread like wildfire, a testament to the unbreakable will of free men standing against tyranny. Leonidas became a symbol, not of death, but of eternal defiance. The aftermath was unspeakable. The fields were littered with corpses, vultures circling above. The air reeked of rot, and victory hollowed by loss. Survivors spoke of Spartan bodies burned on pyres, the smoke rising like dark prayers. Mothers in Sparta did not weep. They lifted their heads and said, "He was born to die this way." Such was their creed, harsh, unwavering, and terrifying in its devotion. The world began to realize that Sparta's true power was not its soldiers, but its unyielding belief in sacrifice. Historians often paint Thermopylae as the perfect tragedy, a battle lost, yet spiritually won. It was never about numbers. It was about message. Leonidas' death lit a fire across Greece. City-states once divided began to unite. The blood spilled at Thermopylae became the ink with which freedom's story was written. The Persians, for all their might, could not conquer the idea that courage, pure, unrelenting courage, could outlive empires. The Persian army marched onward, but something had shifted. Each step forward came with whispers of ghosts, of Spartans who would not die quietly. Even Xerxes, seated on his golden throne, looked uneasy. He had won the pass, but lost the narrative. Greece now burned with purpose, and soon, at battles like Salamis and Plataea, the tide would turn. Thermopylae had become a prophecy, the spark of vengeance that would consume Persia's pride. In the centuries that followed, poets and painters transformed Thermopylae into legend. They spoke of godlike heroes, of Leonidas bathed in holy light. Yet beneath the myth lies something far more haunting, the story of men who knew they were doomed and fought anyway. No divine intervention, no miracles, only human will, sharper than any blade. Their legacy survives not because they lived, but because they died well. Modern historians still debate the numbers, the strategy, even the terrain. But one truth remains unshaken. Thermopylae was not a military defeat, it was a moral victory. In a world ruled by fear, the Spartans taught mankind the price of freedom. They stood against impossible odds and made death itself a weapon. The pass where they fell became sacred ground, where courage echoes louder than time itself. Imagine standing there, amid the ashes, the smell of blood heavy in your lungs. The sun burns overhead, and every heartbeat feels borrowed. You look around, and every friend you ever had lies still beside you. Would you still raise your spear? Would you still fight, knowing the end is certain? The Spartans did, and in doing so, they became more than men. They became memory itself, carved into the bones of history. The pass of Thermopylae still exists, quiet now, blanketed by olive trees and sea mist. But if you listen closely, you can almost hear it, the clash of bronze, the thunder of war cries, the final breath of kings. It's as if the earth remembers what humans cannot forget. Tourists pass through, unaware that each stone beneath their feet once drank the blood of heroes. Time softens all things, but not this place. Somewhere between myth and memory, Leonidas stands eternal, his spear raised, his eyes unyielding. He asks us the same question that haunted him before his final dawn. What is a life worth if lived without honor? And perhaps that is why the story endures. Because in a world that often kneels, we still look to those who stood tall against the impossible. Thermopylae reminds us that history is not written by victors alone. It is written by those who choose to stand, even when standing means falling. The Spartans' defiance carved its mark deeper than any Persian sword. They became the embodiment of defiance itself, a message passed from one generation to the next, that freedom demands blood and courage demands everything. And yet, for all its grandeur, Thermopylae is a tale of tragedy, of sons who never returned, of mothers who buried hope long before bodies, of a king who knew his destiny and walked toward it anyway. It is beautiful in its sorrow, terrible in its truth, because bravery, in its purest form, is not about winning. It is about enduring the inevitable with grace. As dusk fell on the third day, the last Spartan drew his final breath. The pass went silent. The wind carried away the smoke and the cries, leaving only the whisper of the Aegean waves. And though the world moved on, the name Thermopylae lingered like a scar on civilization's conscience, a reminder of the thin line between courage and madness, and how both can shape eternity. So when we speak of heroes, remember them, not as statues of marble or symbols of war, but as men who chose purpose over survival. Their story isn't just about Sparta or Greece. It's about the eternal struggle between freedom and tyranny, light and darkness, man and his own fear. The 300 Spartans didn't just die for their land. They died so the world would remember what it means to fight for something greater than life itself. Like, share, and subscribe to keep history's forgotten voices alive. See you in the next video, where we uncover another untold truth of the ancient world.